Is a transgendered person morally obligated to tell their potential sex partners beforehand that they are transgender? Why? Yes, it's best for both people involved, not only for moral/honesty reasons, but also for safety. I dunno. Sometimes threads like these are silly because it just ends up with people circle jerking over trashing this idea of a theoretical trans person tricking someone, with little regard for the actual situation being presented. I get the sense some people see threads like these and go, yes, another opportunity to be as tactless as possible while pretending to care about the topic. As a trans woman, it's a dick move if you don't disclose beforehand. Sexual preference is a thing, and yes, it's okay to have a preference of genitalia. End of story. If at any point you need to ask yourself, is it technically wrong if? Yes, it's wrong. Yes, honesty is essential in a relationship. As a trans man myself, speaking from experience, anyone who I felt comfortable enough with and trusted enough to have sex with is someone who already knows I'm trans. Ignoring the fact that 75% of my friends are LGBTQ+ anyway, I would never feel comfortable hooking up with a stranger or someone I'd just met. Therefore, I'd never be in the situation where I have to disclose that fact to a sexual partner. I think a lot of people underestimate how important it is to us to feel safe. There are probably not many trans individuals who hook up with absolute strangers and put themselves in the risky situation of having found a partner who will hurt them if things go south. More than likely, anyone making it to the bedroom with us is either already aware or has been ruled out as being a transphobe. I'm sure that's not always the case. There are exceptions to every rule, of course, but it's still a lot less likely to happen than you think. Also, the term is transgender, not transgendered. It could potentially be very dangerous for them if they didn't. What I'm about to say is going to seem unbelievable and even like a lazy fabrication because of everything involved, so take this as you will. In college, I did yard work for a cop in his 40s. He looked out for me and my friends and would come up with simple tasks for us to complete, so he'd have an excuse to slip us some extra cash. He even grilled for us because we were so broke. By all counts, he seemed like a great dude. Then one day he got drunk and bragged about the time he brought a trans woman home from a bar. They began intercourse. He found out she was a trans woman and then proceeded to beat the shit out of her. He kept referring to the person as a hermaphrodite. I've never met a trans person who wasn't completely open about it from the beginning. Nothing to be ashamed of. No need to hide it while dating. You technically might have. 100% yes. You're agreeing to be with someone. You should tell that person about you. And that's a big fucking bombshell to drop on someone from your own mouth, let alone if they find out about it themselves. Yes, sexual preferences are a very particular thing. One's gender doesn't matter for most life activities, and it makes sense that one shouldn't have to disclose anything to do with gender identity for most activities in life. But when it comes to sex, all people involved have a right to shut it down at any time if they feel uncomfortable about it. Not telling a potential partner that you are transgender greatly increases the chances that a potential partner will be uncomfortable. A transgender individual will be increasing their own chances of a bad situation if they are not upfront about it, not just their potential partners. All this being said, I do feel for the transgender individual who just wants to live a normal life and not have to disclose something about themselves that should be completely accepted by society. But this is one of the few cases where I do think it matters to a lot of people. If I was the non-trans person in the potential hookup, I don't think it would bother me. For me, you're into who you're into. It's not suddenly a deal breaker if I learn that the person I want has different anatomy than I expected, or had surgery to change their anatomy, but I do think there would be less potential for an uncomfortable situation if I knew ahead of time. I'm trans. Answer is yes. People who say otherwise are delusional of the situation we're in. Also, one thing I find odd is everyone assumes trans women equals pre-opus. I get it's the case in most but not all. It's definitely a conversation that should be had with your partner or potential. Yes, obviously. Within the trans community we typically strongly advocate for it. Usually the general rule is before any physical contact some debate about whether hugging counts or not, but in general it's advisable to reveal that information prior to any sexual contact. The reason is twofold. 1. It's a sign of respect to tell them before anything sexual happens, and 2. It's simply safer for us. You never know how the person will react, and if it's going to be a negative reaction, it would have a very high probability of becoming violent if any sexual contact has been made prior. Mind you, this is a very abridged answer. Lot of details and variables that could be brought up, but to sum it up, yes, most of us believe we should tell the other person first, because so many people have brought it up. I 100% agree that the hug part shouldn't be an issue. A hug is a hug, but there is a very small portion of the population for whom even a hug would justify some level of violence. As such, some in the trans community advocate for telling them before hugging. Some say it's an unassuming. I usually advocate a case-by-case basis approach. I think it should definitely happen sometime before the pants come off. Surprise, I have a penis/vagina. Could go badly, I think. Yes. And especially in situations where the transgender person has not had any sex change operations. I feel like respecting the other person's sexuality and their preference of genitals is super important. I feel like if you think it's a deal breaker, you should tell the person regardless of what it is. Yes, both in a relationship and in the case of a one-night stand, your partners deserve to know who they are being intimate with. If that's a deal breaker for the other person, then so be it. People get slammed for saying they wouldn't sleep with a trans person, but that's incredibly unfair. You are a person too, and you are allowed to choose what you are attracted to. This isn't to say people should be allowed to discriminate against trans people when it comes to things like jobs or housing, but each individual person gets to decide what they are comfortable with in their partners. It is not transphobic to say you aren't attracted to trans people, or that you wouldn't want to have sex with someone who has transitioned. I'm trans and I absolutely would not start dating someone without letting them know what's downstairs first. Absolutely. The fact that anyone would even consider not including that crucial piece of information about themselves is disingenuous. Sort by controversial, unless you want to hear the same answer repeated dozens of times. I read a lot of people saying I'm not transphobic, but I'll go a slightly different route. I have trans friends and colleagues, but I'm torn as to how I would feel having intercourse with somebody post-op to match my gender preference. I think I do have some hang-ups regarding trans individuals. Maybe transphobic doesn't feel like the right word, but clearly I have some investment in feeling uneasy about something that doesn't really matter. After all, I don't discriminate among the vaginas of the women I've had sex with, so long as they were clean and hygienic. They haven't had to be uniform in appearance. If a trans person has a serviceable and clean vagina or vagina facsimile, I don't understand why I should be concerned, but evidently some part of me is, as I feel that I would want to know. It feels analogous to me to not knowing some other element of a person's background and wondering if I'd really care about what religion they were born into or what their particular politics are. I feel like I'd be lying if I said those were things I had to be aware of before sex, rather than things I'd want to know at the start of a relationship. And all of these people saying that trans people should divulge so as to keep from being harmed. Doesn't it kind of bother you that they have to do something expressly from the fear that we will fucking kill them? I'm prepared to admit that I'm not a perfectly logical and consistent person, and my desire to know if there is a difference between their presenting and birth gender may not be strictly fair. I'm not going to go around trying to tell everybody I'm not transphobic, but when clearly something about it does bother me, however slight, I hope that this doesn't offend the trans people reading this. I don't want to diminish your humanity in any form or fashion. Any relationship not built on trust is most likely to fail, so I would say yes. Also, if I refuse to be with you because I found out you are transgendered, that does not make me transphobic.